Everyone. Thank you for joining. My name is Reuel, as Kelly has already said. I am the designer and creator of DEMESTIK. It's a brand that I started back in 2012. Something that I always knew I wanted to do, but it took me a while to get the courage to start my own brand. I've always had a love for clothing and fashion and styling, even as a kid. As a kid growing up in the Christian church, it was a place that on Sunday mornings, it was the time to dress up and the time to pretty much show your personal style. And on those Sunday mornings, my siblings, my mother, and I, we would always just get dressed up, and it made us feel so great. And I always knew the connection that fashion had to our emotions. And it's been something that I've been learning about more and more as I've gotten into my brand. But in those days, my grandmother was the first lady of the church, and I was always admiring her with her church hats and her matching shoes and purses. And she was also a seamstress, which was something that I always admired as well. Now, back in those times, a young boy wanting to learn how to sew was not necessarily something she wanted to teach me to do, and she never did. But I always admired that. And I knew that at some point, I was going to go from just gazing at clothing and magazines and then deciding to make them. So in high school, I had the opportunity to go to a vocational school in my junior and senior year. And there I studied pattern making and sketching and sewing. And that's where I got my start. That was the first time I ever touched a sewing machine, the first time I ever knew what a pattern was. And from there, I just knew that this was going to be the career for me. I knew that my life was always going to be something in the creative world, but what was that going to be? Was I going to do hair, makeup, something? No, fashion was great, but designing and making clothes made me happy. And I saw how happy it made other people. So that was the start for me understanding this is what I wanted to do. After graduating from high school, I went to college in my hometown of Virginia Beach, Virginia. And in 2007, I left there to move to New York City to study fashion here. And here is where I really learned the industry and the business of fashion and understood that it's not just, the designer sewing at their sewing machine. There's a whole other piece that goes behind it. And it was very eye-opening to see that. I interned for many people, worked for a couple of people in the fashion industry, but also just in manufacturing and production, and seeing the back end of the fashion industry, not just the glitz and glamour and the fashion week and being in the face of different celebrities. That wasn't the thing that I fell in love with. I fell in love with the production. I fell in love with understanding the techniques of making clothing. And through that process, I was able to birth DEMESTIK in 2012. Now, that wasn't something that I really planned to happen. I was working for a company, I got let go from my job. And after getting let go from my job, I had the option of working for someone else or trying to have enough courage to start my own thing. So, of course, I worked for someone else first. I worked for them for 2 weeks and I said, no, there's something within me that I know needs to be said. And there's something that other people need to hear from me. And I want to resonate with those people. So I created a collection using African wax prints, which are the colorful prints you see behind me. And how did I get inspired by that? I was inspired by that because I had a friend who I was making a dress for using the wax fabrics. And she kind of sent me on a journey to look for them because she said, I want a dress and I want it in these African prints. So I went to Midtown and I found a store that was selling them. And when I went into the store, it was like stacks and stacks of African wax print fabric that was taller than myself. And just seeing all these vibrant colors kind of in between each other, I wanted to pull them out and really open them up and see exactly what this was. And when I did that, there was something within myself that just said, why is no one using this fabric in a more modern way? Why is there no one taking these beautiful prints that have a huge cultural reference and putting them into the market in a way that makes sense for the everyday woman? So after I made her that custom dress, I told myself, this is a fabric and the material that I want to use. And understanding that was a great point for me because I knew that fashion and style has so much of a vast way of, utilizing different materials. I like all kinds of fabrics, from sequins to embroidered fabrics to silk. But there's something about the structure of this cotton that enabled me to design the clothes that I love to design. So after that, I decided to make a six piece collection. I named the first shirt after my sister, which was called the Naomi top. And I named the first dress after my grandmother, which was the mini bell dress. So I made the mini bell dress in 4 prints and the Naomi top in 2 prints. And one of my friends, she introduced me to Etsy at that time. So I said, okay, I don't really know how to make my own website. I don't know how I'm going to reach customers. And, I don't want to just like be floating out here in the atmosphere with this brand. So I put my clothing on Etsy, and I don't want to say the rest was history, but that was the starting point for where the brand is today. After putting my clothing on Etsy, I started to get a lot of attention from the corporate office of Etsy, and they wanted to understand, like, what's this brand? I mean, fashion on Etsy wasn't such a big thing in 2012. It was more of, the handmade goods and maybe making a scarf, but not fashion as we think about in terms of our everyday clothing. So they wanted to talk to me, and I was introduced to, the marketing team, and they really pushed my brand on Etsy. They helped me to not only reach people here in the US, but reach people all across the world. And as time went on, I started to build on the collection, introducing new products, but still having this core base of designs that I would reintroduce in different prints, because people just continue to like the same design over and over. And I didn't want to change the entire look of the brand. So that's how I started it. It over time, I've been able to use the same designs and just change different prints and add in other prints that or other fabrics that haven't been inspiring to me as far as being an American. So I'll use things like gingham and polka dots just to kind of switch it up and also give it a little bit more of an American feel to it. I always call this brand a universal lifestyle brand for that reason. It's coming from my heritage of being African American, but also, things that I've always enjoyed seeing over time in the fashion industry. So I'm going to share my screen now so I can talk more about my process. So the opening image is an image from a collection I did in 2014. This is actually shot in the apartment of my assistant at the time, which was crazy. This is actually her apartment. And there's nothing that was really set up except just putting the models in there. But I always wanted to make sure that Domestik felt organic. I wanted to make sure that it felt attainable and wearable to the everyday woman. And I have customers from all over the world again, and from different backgrounds, different career paths. And it's interesting to hear their stories and how they incorporate Domestik into their life, and also to see how they wear it in their everyday life. So going back to my process, everything with Domestik is made to order, which was something that I thought was very important coming into this industry. We know that fast fashion has been something that has been very damaging to the industry. And when I talk about fast fashion, I'm not just talking about Zara or H&M. I'm talking about Kmart. I'm talking about Target. I'm talking about anything that has a multitude of clothing that's being made for a really low cost and just sitting in a store or sitting in a warehouse. It's hurting our environment. So for me, the brand name Domestik came from that idea. I wanted to find majority of my fabrics domestically. I wanted to find my notions domestically, my pattern makers, and also my production is done domestically. So I just changed the name of it and used the phonetical spelling of the word to give it more of a, people say, like, more Ebonics sounding. So I wanted to make sure that this brand resonated in that way. Also, moving forward, I started to think about what Domestik means to some other people, and people were always saying, well, it sounds more like, home. And I started to resonate with home. Like, Domestik is home for me. It's the place where I'm from, like my hometown of Virginia. This whole brand started from my roots of being an African American man. And so the word just makes so much sense to me when I first started the brand. I didn't want to have my name on it so much. I didn't want it to just center around Reuben Reuel, because he's nobody but somebody. So I wanted to make it separate from myself. So that way, when I look at this brand, I can see how it resonates with other people as well, and how it can have a different approach to speak to things that I truly love. So to start in my process, how I started, I first made a pattern, and I got that pattern digitized here in New York City. I, again, found some fabrics and prints that really resonated and were very cohesive and that spoke to me. And then I basically cut out everything that gets ordered. I have a team of seamstresses here in New Jersey that are very gracious and loving, and I've been working with them for years. So when a customer orders, I'll get the order, I'll make my cut list, I'll lay the fabric on my cutting table, place the pattern down on the fabric, cut it out, hand it over to my sewers, they sew it, I do a quality control check when they give it back to me, and then pack it and ship it. So people always ask me the question, how are you able to sustain yourself and your business by doing this process? I think that a lot of companies, they waste a lot of design, they waste a lot of fabric, they waste a lot of time and effort trying to sell something that they don't even know has the legs to sell. They don't even know if the customer actually wants it. So I made sure that I tested out fabric, I tested out styles to make sure that, these styles could stay relevant. I always think in a very like classic way as well. I try to stay away from trends too much, but what I've been able to do is style the clothing to make it work for a different time. So people always say, your clothes are so timeless. I wear it again and again, and I feel so good in it, and I get compliments. And that's what I think people want to feel when they are getting something from a creator. And that's what a creator also wants to feel. You want to make sure that when you're designing something, it has, legs to live in a different lifetime. And here is my brand philosophy. Designing is simple. Keeping styles pure is the key. Interesting details help bring a focus. Structure and movement, body and fit, function and agenda. A garment should have a purpose. Without it, there is no point. And I truly believe in that. Working in this industry, I've seen so many great talents, leave the industry. I've seen so many great garments not be worn. I've seen, so many great trims get cast away. And I kept this and made this philosophy for myself to always remember, when I'm designing something, it has to fit into this mold. And I think that was very, at the time, I didn't even know it would last this long, but it's good for me to have something to go back to, just to remind myself, if you're trying to do something outside of the parameters of your philosophy, it's just not going to work for you. So I think this is a very strong tool for any creative to have. Just making something that resonates with yourself, making something that speaks to your design aesthetic. And as time goes on, it will grow and it may change, but always have something to focus on when you're creating. This is the story of the beginning, which I just pretty much explained. I just really wanted to do something that was very impactful, create things that are very impactful. And there's something about these colors and prints that did it automatically. Being in the fashion industry can be very, very challenging to stay afloat. And that's just the realness of it all. And I think people think, oh, we're just celebrities and that. No, there's a lot of ego ahead of a lot of fashion designers that they're able to cover that up. But the reality is, you always want to remember where you came from, and you always want to understand, again, your philosophy and your aesthetic. So again, using these prints, people are able to connect domestic with something. And it's been these prints for the past almost 9 years now. And it's one thing to just like have a start point and then switch to something else. And then you kind of lose your customer, you lose your customer base. And that's a really important thing, to hold on to them, because they're expecting something from you that they're used to. And this was my debut collection that I explained a few minutes ago. The Naomi top on the left, and the mini bell dress all throughout, as you see. This was a very important photo shoot and very important time. We actually shot this in the photographer's kitchen, which was not something I thought was the way to go, but it always reminds me that you can start from a place of just something. And I always tell people, just start, because you never know where it's going to land. You never know. As long as you keep your mind in a place of consistency and growth, that's what's going to keep your brand and keep your creativity flowing. Just never stop something, or just never give yourself the idea that, oh, it's not going to work out, or no, this was shot in the kitchen with 2 pairs of shoes and no accessories. So I always appreciate seeing this. Again, it makes me smile. And it's funny because I didn't ask this model to do any of these poses or anything. Like, she put these clothes on and it almost changed her whole persona. And again, that's what I started to realize with fashion. It has the ability to change your whole persona. And I have several stories from customers where they tell me, what your clothes do for me is something that is magical. It's something that I don't feel every day. And when I put these clothes on, it gives me the confidence. It gives me the, the beauty. It gives me all the things I need just to go out and live my life. And that's extremely touching to me, and a huge blessing to have. This is the ethos of the brand. And this kind of goes back to the philosophy. I always knew that I wanted to make things that would fit the figure of the woman. I wanted to make her feel her best in clothing. So there are elements of the clothing that I would introduce or put into the technical design of the clothing, like elastic in the waistband instead of having a very, very strict or structured body type. I wanted to make sure that there was flow and there was ease. I always put pockets in my dress, which I hear a lot of women love that, which makes me happy as well, to know that I'm giving them something that most designers don't think about. I listen to my customers a lot. And I think that as a creative, having that feedback is extremely important, because you want to make sure that you're not just thinking from, oh, I know everything. No, the customer is the person that knows the most. So I listen to everything they have to say, even down to there's something in your site that's not working. There's, I don't know how. I'm trying to make sure that everything that Domestik is about is giving back to the people that desire to have it and wear it, and also pay my bills, because let's be real, this is an exchange here. So I'm really excited and happy that I've had the patience to listen, and also happy that I have customers that truly love me enough and love the brand enough to help me along the way. And here I'm just going to be scrolling through and showing pictures of past collections and silhouettes that, again, have grown over time. Another thing that kind of goes back to the philosophy and the ethos, I always play with variations and options. And that was another thing that I thought a lot of designers don't think about. Everything that I create usually has a variation of length, sleeve, or collar. So for instance, the top on the right, that is the Tam top. And that was actually named after Tamron Hall, who was a really wonderful customer and really nice friend. And I wanted to design this shirt with this mutton sleeve, but I didn't want to limit the shirt to the mutton sleeve. So I made sure that I also offered it in a long sleeve and a short sleeve. And with those variations, I also alter the price. So it gives some people, if I wanted to test out Domestik and I want to do it at my price point, I can buy the short sleeve instead of buying the long sleeve. And at least it can range in a place that I can afford. And that's another thing I always think about. What are people able to afford? Who's my customer? What does she want? And she loves variations. She can also order this top in different prints. So it's not just subjected to just one colorway or one print. And these are other styles from the past as well. And as you can kind of see with the flow of the images, I like the aesthetic of taking photos inside of a home setting, because again, Domestik is home, and that's where we spend most of our time when we're not out into the world, especially with COVID happening. That was something that I really wanted to push, that message that you can still feel your best and look your best, even if you're in your home. You can put on your clothes and have your own, I don't know, fashion show for yourself. So I just wanted to make that relation to the brand as well. And these are more from the past. Here are some fashion shows that I was also included in years past. And then here's a moment that I will never forget, and I must share the story. So back in 2014, I want to say, I have a friend who's Beyonce stylist, and at the time she was just starting, and she said, "Oh, I'm styling someone, a celebrity, and I don't know if you're interested, but it's Beyonce." And I was like, "I don't think you're telling me the truth." And she said, "Yes, I am." So I loaned her some samples and said, "Okay, take it." And then one day on Instagram, Beyonce posted this. I just kind of went crazy because I had no idea this was going to happen. And this goes back to the idea of when you're creating something or when you are starting out as a creator, you just never know how things will flow. So just never give up and never stop doing the things that you love to do. And then it happened a couple of more times, which I wasn't expecting. And then it also happened at her baby shower. This was a custom skirt that I made for her in 2017. Me and my seamstresses, we literally had, I think, 2 days to make it for her baby shower. So it was pretty stressful, but it was just wonderful to be able to be a part of, this experience with her without really meeting her, but also just being there in creation. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. And now I'll talk more about sustainability and the practices that we are doing. I still make everything made to order for that reason. I still want to make sure that I am having the least impact on the environment, but also making sure that whatever I'm creating is actually being worn or used by a person. There's another component of the brand that I'm working on this year. And in the past 9 years, I've seen DEMESTIK grow, but there have been other things that I've been wanting to do with the brand. So DEMESTIK is now DEMESTIK Collection, which is the new collection that I just released today on my website. There's also a new section called DEMESTIK Core, and I'll explain more about Core in a minute. And then there's also DEMESTIK Capsule, which is a capsule collection of about 7 to 9 pieces that I'll be introducing probably once or twice per year. And these will be more elevated designs where I'm using other textiles that I find in the garment district and places in other countries where I'm just experimenting with other fabrics and experimenting with more high-end design, because I have customers who've been with me for a long time and they're ready for the next step. They're ready for more elevated clothing. And I think this brand has the leverage and the power to do it. So I want to try it out and test it out. And that's coming out in September of this year. Now, DEMESTIK Core is something extremely new to me. And I'm really excited about it because it's going to allow me to do something that I've always wanted to do. I've always wanted to put these African prints or just prints in general on other textiles and fabrics. So I'm working with a company called Resonance Companies. They are, I would say, 5 years old now. And last year, they onboarded 10 Black designers to pretty much test out their process. And how their process works is this: you can upload and download your own personal pattern, your like digitized pattern of the actual dress itself. And then you can upload your own prints. And then you can pretty much like lay the print on the pattern piece, and they print it out digitally in their factory in the Dominican Republic. And they cut it out, they sew it, and they ship it direct to their consumer. This is not a company that is trying to add more waste. They're actually trying to help the environment. And I think that is a very powerful thing right now. Being sustainable with made to order is extremely important. And I think a lot of brands can do it, but they're just not used to it because of the way the fashion system has been working for so long. And with Core, I can also use different bodies that they already have within their system and put my own designs, my own prints on those bodies as well. So the library of fabrics that they have are like silk georgette, silk charmeuse, cotton twill. It's like a library of 30 different fabrics. And to be able to see that vision come to life has been pretty darn interesting. And what that also gives me is a leverage to reach another customer and clientele. So with Core, it's more of a youthful brand. And I think one of the biggest things that it's allowing me to do is to do menswear, which is something I've been asked to do for so long. And to be able to have this partnership with them, and again, having a partnership with the factory and a sustainable manufacturing process, that is something that's extremely important, and it's a huge blessing to the domestic brand. So I'm super excited for that. This year, I should have the first collection out by mid-May, and that's going to hopefully catapult the brand in a way that I've been wanting it to do for many, many years. That's pretty much all I have to say. I feel like I'm ranting at this point, but I'm extremely open for questions, and I love getting questions and being able to give more of what this process is. I think that a lot of designers are kind of leaning towards this process now of being more sustainable. And I think that people need to get this idea that sustainability means it's not beautiful clothing, or it's just, you know, something made from hemp. Or no, sustainability and sustainable practices just means we're doing more but doing less at the same time. So I am totally open for questions, and thank you for listening.
Yeah, feel free to put questions in the chat, or you can call them out. You can unmute yourself and call out questions that we can talk about.
One question I have, you talked about kind of choosing patterns. Do you have any like patterns or color schemes in particular that you find yourself returning to, or is it kind of like an evolving process of what you're interested in?
Thank you for asking that question. It's a really great question. How do I select my patterns and colors? Although the brand is seasonless, and I try to, you know, sell it as that way, but you know, we still think of spring, summer, fall, winter. So I try to make things, I try to select patterns and prints and colors that speak to the season. You know, the things that we think about automatically with spring are yellows and bright pinks and, you know, lavenders and greens, like those Easter colors. But I also try to mix in things that have a twist to it. So for instance, I have a fabric, I can actually show it to you. I'm using this for a dress right now, and I'm releasing it in this season. The yellow really pops, but this kind of brick burgundy is more so of a fall, warmer color. So I just try to make sure that when I'm choosing for a collection, the patterns and prints have to feel, the colors of the prints have to feel cohesive. I don't try to think so much about it. When I buy them, I lay them out. I look at them as a whole, and sometimes I'll pull some things out and say, okay, this doesn't work or that doesn't work. And also, the great thing about these fabrics, I will take a print like, I have it here, but I have one print and I'll use it in different styles as well. So it still makes it more cohesive because you have this one great print, but you'll put it in a different style and it's next to something that still fits the mold. So hopefully that answered your question.
That did, thank you.
You're very welcome. Please don't be shy. I answer anything.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thanks for your talk. It's really interesting. My jaw like dropped when I saw Beyonce.
Imagine me.
I know, that's so amazing. But I was curious more about what you were mentioning with elevated design and, you know, your next steps. I'm not super familiar with fashion, so could you talk more about like what that means and what it looks like?
Yes, for sure. Elevated design. So with domestic, again, with the philosophy and the ethos, I try to make clothing that will fit the everyday life. So even when I style the clothing for the photo shoot, which if you go to my site and you'll see my new collection, you'll see that I try to pair my designs with jeans or shorts or a denim skirt, something like that, just to make it more cohesive for every day. So with the domestic capsule collection, these will be fabrics that will be more for evening, things that are for special occasion, things that are for vacation, those very special pieces that you may not wear every day. You may wear it to a nice event, even though people still wear domestic collection to these same events. But I wanted to make something that, or design clothing for capsule that feel more about the things that I've always wanted to design. So there are designs that I've been holding on to that have a little more flair, a little more fabric, and more technical aspects to it that I want to incorporate for that collection.
Oh, that's super cool. I guess a follow-up question on that is, would those be more of like a one-time only, like a limited collection, or things you might repeat?
These are limited only. So that's the whole idea with capsule. It's to attract the customer and say, listen, I'm only making 5 of these. So if you get it, you get it. And if you don't, you don't. And that's another thing with the domestic collection that I did not say, is that when the fabric runs out, the fabric is gone. And there's no way for me to get that fabric back unless the company reproduces the fabric. So that's another selling point for domestic, is that this is scarcity. This is actually me taking enough fabric to make enough items for my customers. And then once it's gone, it's gone. And I think that also adds to the psychographics of the customer, where they're feeling like they're getting something extremely special, which they are. You will not see 100 people wearing the same domestic print, because that just doesn't exist right now.
Can I ask a follow-up question first? So clothes are gorgeous. Thank you so much for this talk and presentation. But are you still sourcing primarily from the garment district, or is there any potential to like connect to the fabric manufacturers themselves and like have even more exclusive just for domestic prints? Is that something you've worked on at all?
Yes. First of all, I love that you're knitting. It's like making me laugh and making me happy at the same time. So yes, that's something that I've thought about. I mean, a lot of the fabrics, some of the fabrics, they do come from Holland, where they're manufactured. Some of the fabrics I buy from the Bronx. There's not a manufacturer, but a fabric store that used to be in the garment district and then moved to the Bronx. So again, the garment district has always been my hub, but now I have these other places where I can get fabric from. So yes, I do venture out of the garment district for my fabric. I am here for more questions.
I was just going to follow up on Jenny's question and just ask if you thought about partnering with the artist on fabric design.
That has been something I've thought about. It's funny you asked that question. I do have a few friends. Not even funny. It's actually a real thing. I did it before. Crazy. What am I talking about? So back in 2018, I had a collaboration with a company called Ashro, ASHRO. And Ashro is a company that's a catalog company. They've been around for years. My grandmother used to get the catalog. My mother used to get the catalog. And one of their marketing directors, they found my brand. And they already dabble in using wax prints, but they wanted to feature my aesthetic in their catalog. And I thought that was such a huge honor. So when I did that collaboration, the only thing that made sense to me, knowing that I don't really design prints myself, there's an artist that I know, and she designs these amazing prints. I don't even know how she does it. She has this, it's like something she does on Photoshop, where she takes her own art and uses this kaleidoscope kind of feature, and it makes these amazing, great prints. So I did partner with her during that time. So her artwork is on my clothing. So yes, but going in the future, I would love to do more partnerships like that, because there are so many talented print designers that I know their prints will look so great in these clothing. So thank you for reminding me.
No problem. I was wondering, what are what are the kind of edges of fashion design? Like, where do you go? How far do you wander in design world, and where would you not go if as a fashion designer?
Uh, I'm not really a conceptual designer. I don't call my work art, and I know that there are some designers who create almost like sculptures or armor, and it leans towards art. So, but for me, I've always thought about the everyday person, the everyday woman. How does she want to feel every day? I mean, we open these magazines sometimes and we love what we see, but we can't see it on ourselves. And that's kind of my limit. If a person can't really wear it on like to, I don't know, to church or to work or just in their everyday life, it doesn't really resonate with me. So that's kind of my limit. I just don't want to go venturing too deep into this artistic world of fashion.
Thank you.
No problem.
I have a question. I love the fabrics that you work with, and I always gravitate towards wax print. Sometimes it feels like because when I first was introduced to it, I was traveling, and
Hmm.
I have so you kind of develop a relationship with the print, like it feels like it has a specific moment in time, and I think about Ghana and like Kwame Nkrumah's like um inauguration, and how like you get like the print that actually marks that moment in time.
Yes, yes.
And then sometimes it's very political. um so for me, there's always like a story like that. Seeing that print reminds me of a very specific time in my life, and if I see one and I like I have to kind of have that feeling about it. So I just wonder, for you, what you deal with all of these different prints.
Hmm.
Like, do you have some that you're really attached to, and have you kind of engaged with the story behind the print? And I missed like the first 10 minutes, so you might have
No
talked
problem.
about that. But
No, that like you're speaking to my soul now. That's something that again I always tell people, okay, after doing my like ancestry.com, I know that I'm like from West Africa. Like my ancestry is from West Africa. So there's something about these prints, of course. I do believe in, reincarnation and things like that. I'm not far from these prints. So being attracted to them was something that was immediate. And there are some prints that when they sell out, it's almost like a piece of me it's like, oh no, like that one is gone. I wish I can get more of it. But yeah, I think that's why I keep going back to it, because there's something about them that just won't let me stray away from it. And I think it has a lot to do with my ancestry and the vibrant colors. They make me happy and they keep me creating. So that's how I know that this is the thing that I need to, or the material that I need to use in order to create my own design. Thank you for that question.
have you had a chance to travel to West Africa? Do you
Not
know
yet.
your work
And
there?
COVID kind of messed that up for me as well. So I'm waiting for things to change so that way I can go over there and really feel, what it feels like to be there, and also to see this and in real life in different cultures as well. That was one of the things that, as I said before, I called DEMESTIK a universal lifestyle brand, because I see so many different types of people buying these clothes from different races, different religions, and I think that's so beautiful to see a world where we're able to, express ourselves. And some people don't even know the history about the fabric. Some people don't look at it from the aspect of, oh, this is cultural fabric. They just see pretty, beautiful, vibrant colors. And then as they start to wear it, they learn more about it. And I think that's a really beautiful thing. I never wanted to make clothing just for a specific, race or anything like that. I wanted to make it for everyone. So I'm happy it resonates in that way. I see a question in the chat. Let's see. What factors can and do affect the designer's motivation in everyday work? Oh, that question. Oh no. Every day is different. there are ups and downs, especially without just being a designer. I'm also an entrepreneur. I'm a business person. So it's always this challenge of trying to find out or trying to find time to put myself in each role every day. Motivation for me is talks like this. Motivation for me, having a customer to send me feedback. Last year, with COVID happening, I started out with a really great collection in January of 2020. And then we all got locked in and got locked down. And I was like, oh no, nobody's gonna wear clothes. Nobody's gonna buy clothes. So what am I gonna do? And I had friends and family to tell me, you have all this fabric, Reuben. I mean, masks are a thing. They need to be protected. So why don't you make a mask? And of course, in the beginning, I think we were all just thinking, oh, this is going to pass and that's not going to be a thing. But eventually, it was a thing. And at that time, I said, you know what? If I have the physical material to help people, why not do it? So I started making these masks, and the feedback and the response I received just from the masks, it was like, I can't believe this. I mean, but it still goes back to the textile and the fabric, because the fabrics are so vibrant, and when you're covering your face, you still want to be seen, you still want to feel protected, you still want to feel good. And I think I have more reviews about the masks on my Etsy shop than I do about the clothing, which is pretty funny, but also just amazing. And the reviews are not just, oh, it's a beautiful mask or it's a pretty mask. The reviews are like, every time I wear it, I get compliments. Every time I wear it, I feel fabulous. Every time I wear it, I feel beautiful. I'm like, well, your whole face is covered. That's, again, the psychology of that is interesting. But again, I knew that, and I know that this is what I'm supposed to do, again, because it's working in different facets. The next stage that I didn't talk about, I also want to get into home decor, which is something I've been talking about for years, but I want to do it the right way. So I believe you'll see more of domestic going forward. I'll just put that out there. So that's the motivation I have, just knowing that there is something further out there.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And, knowing that you have a vision that you want to share, I think is so powerful, because I think a lot of designers and artists, they tend to sometimes feel, outside motivation, is a really big impact on what they actually end up doing. Whereas, I think that's something to definitely take away from this, is that you definitely should be able to, see for yourself what you want to be able to accomplish, and then be able to push that forward and not necessarily worry about, outside things, which is great. I see another question in the chat. It says there was something in the beginning about creating with a leg to stand on for the future. What's the criteria do you think about when thinking about timelessness?
My grandfather was a pastor. He passed away in 2019. And when I was a young kid, he would always say, watch and pray. At the time, I didn't know what that meant. I just thought it meant like literally open your eyes and pray. I was like, is that literal, or does it mean something? As I became older, especially moving to New York City and getting into this industry, I understood what it meant. It meant to look, or like to kind of take a step back and look at what's happening. So that's the idea of timelessness for me. When I think about time, again, I've been using the same, like there's a dress I have called the Kia dress. I've been keeping that dress in rotation in this collection year after year after year after year, and it never gets old. It always sells. So I think about, what is good design? What is a good silhouette that will fit any person at any time? How can you style this silhouette with the things you already have? So that's how I think about time. Everything has already been done. I truly believe that. So I just think about, again, the words my grandfather said, just, watch and pray, like kind of take a step back, see what's happening, see what's not happening, and then enter when it's your time to enter. So that's my thought process on that. You're very welcome.
Can I ask another question?
Of course you can.
You talked about maybe starting some men's clothing. Have you thought about designing clothing that could be worn by anybody? That's a style that fits in some way?
Yes. So with the core collection that I'm doing with resonance companies, that's kind of the premise as well. A lot of the styles are, some of the styles are unisex. And when I do the photo shoot, I'm definitely going to style some things on the male and those same things on the female. I know that there are a lot of fluid people, and some people are very unique in their style today. So I'm not trying to limit that idea either. If there's a man that wants to buy the caftan that I'm going to create, go for it. Because guess what? I'm going to wear it too. So I think about that often. I think about where time is going, what people are doing and how they want to feel. And if these clothes resonate with you, and I can show you how you as a person can wear it, why not? Another question, were there any alterations to the norm that were so frequent that conscious design should become fixed? I need to hear this out loud. Who asked this question?
Yeah, it's yeah, were there any alterations to the norm that were so frequent that conscious design should become fixed changes to the design model? And if so, how is this done?
I think I understand the question. Are you saying alterations to the norm of the ethos of domestic and the brand? I don't know how to answer that question.
It could be incorporating feedback.
I mean, I will say this: the model has grown over time in different ways, but it still keeps its core, and I think that's what again brings customers back. It's again knowing that there's an ease to the brand, knowing that it's. I have customers who have ordered the same thing over and over and over again in different prints, and I always ask them, you keep ordering the same top. Like, can you explain to me why you ordered the same top? Does it not get old to you? And they say, no, every time I order a different one, the colors and prints makes me feel like it's different. So I don't think it's always too smart just to switch and change just because, oh, Vogue or this person said the trend is this. It's like, no, I kind of stick to what it is. And then you also have those people who haven't discovered the brand either, and they already resonate with it. So for those who haven't discovered it and they do discover it, they resonate with it, they want to have the same feeling that the person from 10 years ago had. So I try not to change too much of that. I hope that answered the question.
They did add something in the chat that it was related to incorporating feedback. So I think it's the idea that there was some base that gets revised as you got feedback maybe from people
Right.
to kind of create.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, we have only just a couple minutes left. So if anybody has any last minute thoughts or questions for Reuben. So I just have one quick one. How do you see, with everything opening back up again, and you've been doing really well with the masks, and you just launched your new collection, which looks amazing. It's on your website now. How do you see the next few months playing out for you? Do you feel like you're going to be changing a lot, or do you feel like the kind of the adaptability of what you're doing is kind of par for the course at this point?
I think I'll be busy with everything kind of reopening and the weather becoming what it is. I mean, I go to the city pretty often, I would say on a weekly basis, not every day, but the more I go as the weather gets nicer, I'm seeing more people outside. So I mean, even today with the first, when my pre-sale was last weekend, and even seeing the sales from that, I said, oh, people are still shopping. So people are still doing things. I think that it's going to reopen and we'll be doing more. And I know that people want to show the outer layer of themselves to other people in the best way. So I see myself being busy and making more clothing and doing more things, and also incorporating domestic core. That's going to be another layer to the brand and business, and something that a lot of people will be introduced to as their first time buying from the brand. So I'm excited. It feels weird because the things that I planned last year kind of got all over the place. But to be able to come back into this year and still have focus and see that, oh, it's changing for the better for brands like myself. For those who are having challenges, those are the ones who are selling in retail stores. And everything I do is direct to consumer, and I only sell online. So that's been from day one a godsend. So I'm super happy to see what's going to happen next.
I see another question here. Should sustainable tools therefore be translated to cost savings for the designer to be able to easily understand these, or would this diminish the quality of the designs?
That's another thing. That's another concept that people think is like sustainability is going to mess up the quality, and that's not true. There are some high-end brands that don't have the best quality, and that's not me being shady. It's just fact. So I think that being more sustainable, like for me to physically see the garment constructed by my seamstresses, and then also making sure that before it goes to my customer, people can feel the quality when they receive a domestic dress or a domestic top. And they always tell me that piece of the puzzle too. It's like, that's a part of the brand. And I never want that to be a part of the brand that kind of goes away, because that's truly important to me. Giving my customers the best quality is important to me.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Reuben, for taking the time to talk with us. It was really inspiring, I think, for everyone to see, all of the work that you've done so far and to hear your story. Yep, and we have some thanks in the
Oh,
chat.
thank you.
Well,
Thank you so much.